once upon a time, bullied, forced his fellow rivals to swallow their pride and become allies with the help of another challenger waifu, trying to steal away from our dear sympathy booty, Colette Loire. However, becoming allies just shows that our MC is still just useless? Or is he? This episode with Wistoria builds up the character arc for Rizzo and Will again as someone without magic that can be useful with this lone sword. And we get to see the birth of Elf Will Wignall. Spoiler alert, guys, for Wistoria Wand and Sword, Season 1, Episode 9, Bokitachi no Yume. The hook of the episode hits us with the Fire Faction's Logwell stroking the Wise Man's ego, and that the Light Faction Magia Vendor guy hasn't quite returned to the tower yet. They slide in the characteristics of each attribute, like lightning is the self-indulgent type, elves are arrogant, ice is indolent, white people are Karens, and black people are... The all-student practice begins, and it pretty much shows how magically useless Will is as the team of Liana, Wignall, Shion, Julius, Colette sprint on and off a cliff. With the hint of Liana's backstory and her being the main person forming this super stud team, it is revealed that she is Whitening Bolt material. Also meaning that her family background of Owen Zousis are actually known for their short distance fighting as knights, rendering Will and keeping the appearance of him being magicless more useless as she wrecks these ant monsters with some Owen sick nasty. At this point, you guys know I like to overanalyze hooks or intros to episodes because it tells you so much in such little time. You either win us over or you're just gonna lose us. With today's attention spans, the more fire the hook, the more grace period and time you buy through all the boring parts. So what happens right away in this episode? They are teasing that the Light Faction Magia Vendor guy is gonna somehow, some way make an appearance. He is the one Magia Vendor that we know the least about. And the fact that he's in the middle chair means that he is pretty much the leader of the Magia Vendor, but having the Light Magia Vendor, it gives another air of mystery to the story, that the story can just drop him into the plot whenever they want at any point in the story. And the hook also built off the previous episode, not the gayness part, but the part where Colette is gonna have to keep a close eye on Liana Owen's house, because we can't have Colette competing with another woman. So the start of the all-student practice just shows how proficient and strong this team of Liana, Wignall, Shion, Julius, Colette, and Will's gonna be. But clearly, insight to the characters we are still less familiar with and would like to be more intrigued by is Liana. And we can be sure that Wignall may have his moment of character depth building. And then the story continues to do the most annoying thing you and I already know about, that Will being magicless makes him apparently weak. But I mean, we just watched like 7-8 straight episodes of this same narrative over and over of Will debunking this. But it's something that the story is building up again to build on top of that, to build maybe for other characters. So overall, the hook accomplishes a mysterious component to the story. We get more character development from basically the team leader and likely Wignall as the all-student practice continues into the dungeon, and we get the theme of Will being magicless, being a hindrance again. So after the opening credits, we get reminded by Werkner Sensei about the search ability being the foundational spell for mages, as it helps detect and sense monsters. So what happens to show Will's ineptitude? Will being too slow to react to all the monsters that all of his party's talented mages can sense right away with their search spell. Not only can the search spell help them sense the monsters from a larger range, but Wignall continues his condescending view of Will, questioning Liana along with Julius as Wignall destroys all the monsters in one go. Liana explains that maybe, just maybe, hopefully, Will help as a shield with the over 5 monsters. Just maybe. So the story still insists on making Will being this character that is very, very useless when it comes to the upside of all these mages using their magic. but in this case, the sword being less useful in the situation where the wand shines. Will starts to explain that their wands act as a record keeper as they absorb magic traces from the monsters that they defeated, so that the teacher in the academy knows who killed what monsters and what credits that they deserve. Unfortunately for Will, he gotta do it the old-fashioned way. He's gonna have to bring those dead body parts back. The episode continues to build up Will's arc of being useless, like we haven't seen him overcome being useless multiple times already, but like I said earlier, we are now able to see a practical contrast between why he is useless compared to why those mages are so useful right now with their magic. So Will is hoping and praying that he will actually be useful at some point, and for the plot's sake, there are like 2 evil dudes lurking somewhere at the ending credits of the previous episode. So I guess Will might not be that useless. Who would have thought? After about a day since the all-student practice began, Liana decides for the group that they should rest up. Wignall uses his specialty in illusions to set up a firewall to give themselves a little bit of peace of mind from the surrounding potential threats in the dungeon. Then Will gets tasked with distributing rations, and this is where Wignall reveals another quirk about his personality. He doesn't like to be touched. Only people of worth are allowed to touch him. And if we learned anything about him from the previous episode, Liana is the only one worthy to touch his high elf. We already know how Roasty thinks of Will, but it looks like the condescending elves are always going to fulfill their archetypes. Just like all the times before, Colette comes to meek Will's protection. But Will understands that at a time like this, being meek Will is better for the overall party. So they should try not to cause a ripple in the team synergy. Will goes into the explanation of elves being from another world like the dwarves. And at this point, we've pretty much figured out that Wignall is literally like any other elf in any other show. Condescending, prejudiced against anyone except their own, and maybe of their own. And that they are magically talented as well. And you'll never guess who Alfie Elf is. Eleanor. Yes, Miss Condescending will call you a barbarian elf queen of the wind. Liana begins to explain their goals for how far into the dungeon they will go, and that is to defeat one of the 4 boss keeper monsters on level 10, Luminous Nabaris. Apparently this floor monster is worth 110 credits, and by beating this monster, Liana hopes that this will make them stand out even more for the tower factions, as they will eventually make their way there to hopefully get picked by one of them. As we are slowly approaching a climactic moment for our main characters, Will mentions again that he is scared. And through this entire all-student practice, he's only gained 5 credits, but he is finding the courage within himself with Elfie in mind as he grabs her goggles. At this point, the story has been very linear, clearly building towards a dramatic plot point. So the vibes of the episode and what they're building up into is getting to see Will once again show his worth to all of the others. All the while, it's fair to say that these other characters are gonna face their own adversity, and it's probably going to be the characters that we know little about, that haven't had their own little arc where Will beat the crap out of them. So at this point, there's nothing mind-blowing here, but there clearly is a sense of tension building up right now, because we all know things are gonna go wrong, and there's 2 evil dudes just lopping dudes' heads off somewhere. So with that tension building and that nervous energy building up for this, we're all thinking to ourselves, where is it gonna go wrong? So we got our masked blonde-headed guy and headless guy just bouncing heads around, making us more and more nervous as Julius and others start noticing random corpses popping up as they move further and further into the dungeon to defeat this 110 credits monster. But seeing all of these dead bodies of these monsters is very mysteriously frightening. It should be sounding the alarms and all the red flags around. But these poor students just keep chugging along and knowing that these dead bodies apparently just don't matter. And they think to themselves that they should be the only ones that have actually gotten this far. So Will eventually investigates the corpses and notices that these monsters were killed with brute strength and not magic. But Liana don't care. They're gonna catch themselves a 110 credited monster. What can go terribly wrong? And just like that, there ain't no damn monsters to be killed. cause it's dead meat. Everyone throws up their search ability at this surprising revelation, but this gives Will another flashback because Wertner Sensei explains that the search ability has its flaws, as people can just use the hide ability to conceal themselves, and certain monsters, you know, the big boss kind of type, can go undetected. So very quickly, we got our answer to, this is probably where Will's gonna be useful, huh? And where everyone else is probably gonna face adversity. Ain't that right, Wignall? From above, Will senses the monster before the wands can, and as it shoots a purple blast, Will is eventually able to repel it, but it knocks everyone down. And then another monster comes creeping and crawling all up in Wignall's grill. It's totally about to touch Wignall really hard. So hard that it disrespected a disrespectful elf custom with a blow to the elf and a blow to the elf's pride. As he goes flying across the dungeon and the floor starts to collapse as everyone tries to throw their cool attributed characteristics of earth, fire, ice, lightning towards this new floor monster, but it's just a little bit too late as they come falling down to the floor below, to floor number 11. And then everyone gets split up, causing the entire dungeon to shake, causing an uproar back at the academy station where all the professors are. So floor 11 is outside of this magic academy's reach and is a place that only high mages are allowed to be in. So these students bit off more they can chew and ran into one of the most unsafest positions that they can be in. So Will ends up getting stuck with the hole in his arm elf, and the fire and ice assholes are stuck together as Will's biggest dubs, and Liana, bleeding from her head, is with her fellow Will admirer as she continues to pour onto the dangers of their adverse situation. She explains this weird purplish reddish area they are on is on floor 11, which will lead them deeper into more danger, into floor 15, which is like a tunnel to their death wish. Liana outlines their dire situation more. If they don't team back up with the others, they are likely to die. Cause ain't nobody getting any of this Will Serfort booty otherwise. And here we have it. It's the backstory of Elf Will, the birth of the parallels between Wignall and Will. Bro has been putting on a front like he's hot stuff, but he's just an elf Will Serfort, shunned by his own people for being weak and meek. And about Alfie, she's like Will's Elfie, but Alfie is a total dick instead, at least from the outside perspective. And just when it was about to get good about Wignall's backstory, he wakes up to Will wailing on monsters with his lone sword. Will tries to extend his hand to help patch up Wignall's arm, but Wignall still has that prejudice in him and slaps Will's hands away. You damn Munosha, I'll do it myself. Will analyzes their situation because that is one of his best traits. With an injured Wignall, they have 3 sub-weapons with Rosie's magical items, and they have a little bit of food and water, but all the other stuff that they were carrying, they pretty much lost it. Colette and the others should be in a similar situation as well. He concludes that they probably can only survive up to a day. So meeting up with the others has to take place before then. Wignall answers Will's suggestion of finding the others with one that is typically the right answer of waiting until rescue comes. But considering the dangers of the floor they are on and that creature that is even stronger than the creature that they were supposed to fight, the 110 credited one, they must start their search now for the others before it's too late. While Will and the others are in a dire situation, the noise from the floor collapsing caused a huge ruckus back at the Magical Academy campsite with all the professors. Wertner Sensei is freaking out, and Eliza Sensei explains that there's a stampede of monsters that completely destroyed their camp. Unfortunately for Bruno Sensei and the other professors, the blonde masked one and the headless one already their heads. As Wertner Sensei tries to put the pieces together as to who and what caused this purposeful incident, Edward Sensei screams that the all-student practice is cancelled and both senseis will go in and finally do something amazing within the plot. Or will they be the most disappointing part of this entire plot? Out of nowhere, Rosie tries to backdoor the story with something mysterious on his mind. to pique our interest. Will and Wignall start strolling down floor 11 and after getting a whack to the arm, Wignall is a bit on edge and keeps using his search ability, slowly depleting his magic. So Will tells him to conserve his magic, but Wignall is not exactly in his calm, condescending demeanor right now. Will lays out a plan for his search ability and his own ability to detect the monsters in a closer range. Hopefully, they can avoid the ones that they can detect and slaughter the bastards that they end up in close range with. Their best course of action to survive is to fight as little as possible. Wignall, being frantic in this situation, continues to question why Will is so damn calm. So Will hits him with the tower symbol answer and the fact that he's been studying and soloing these dungeon floors the entire time at school and apparently getting lost and trapped in them multiple times. Then a bunch of porky swine monsters show up to live out a farm pig's dream of mass eating them humans. It looks like this pig fight is one that they cannot avoid. And just like we all witnessed, Will shows that knowledge is wisdom and that the unknown can be known. That's a nice reference back to episode 1. Will has something right now that Wignall doesn't have right now. A pair of these nuts! Courage. Will has some courage. And a lot of physical ability in really good condition. As they fight off these swine monsters, Wignall tries to use an illusion spell that doesn't work on swine monsters, and just as Wignall's mistake could have been fatal, he gets some flashbacks of him and Alfie, but Will, yet again, saves another asshole and hits him with the Daijobu. While Will tries to cheer up Wignall that he's actually a talented elf dude from the prideful race of green-haired elves, Wignall hits him with the cliffhanger. Within this very important character growth moment, I am elf Will Serfort. I'm totally a Munosha too. That is Wignall, and that is the end of the episode. So this episode is the first very exciting one with real enemies that are not just rivals, and we get to see more and more depth to more and more characters to level up and build up this roster of characters, because they're all going to be very important as the story moves along. As we can already see, each character has their own specific attribute, and that clearly is an indicator to how the character dynamics will shape up and who's going to join whose factions and that type of thing. But this is the first real tension, real plot dilemma with your life on the line that makes this episode really exciting. And it's for the first time, all these other characters, all these other students, while this entire time they're supposed to be this crop of talented mages, apparently they're not as talented as they seem, and they're not as powerful as they seem. And now we get to see all these characters face real adversity along with Will. And the story once again built up Will to be useless, but this is the first time where he gets to actually fight with the other mages in a very life or death situation. That wasn't the magical festival arc. So although I do find it a little bit annoying that every episode basically is building up Will to be this weakling, when we all have seen it multiple times now that he's not weak, that he will be useful. So I guess we could say in this instance, in that life or death situation, we get to see that actually unfold rather than him just beating up Julius or something like that. So for Lihana's character, her background isn't really going to be that much explained right now, but it's most important that we build up this Wignall character, because there are going to be a lot of parallels between Will and Wignall, and it's totally setting up a really touchy situation that Roasty wants to be a part of. And while I did read the manga, I don't particularly find these villains interesting, but when villains themselves are not that interesting, just let them do some crazy stuff like people's heads and do like messed up things. Adding that part to the story still makes these villains very interesting for the plot. So I really enjoyed this episode. It's a very linear episode in terms of storytelling. As the first half, it's very typical, but it's clearly building towards something that's mysteriously going to happen that comes out of nowhere. And that was a little bit teased for the hook of the episode with the mystery of that light Magia Vander. So yeah, this might be 1 or 2 episodes away from things really going down, as all the other students try to meet up back with each other with Will and Wignall, Lihana and Colette Julius and Shion. It's going to be very fun to see these character dynamics form and what kind of relationships and growth that we're going to see from these characters as they try to survive and beat these monsters and beat these villains. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this episode. I would love to know. It is totally one that where I read the manga that the anime did a really great job animating this as they have been this entire season. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about this episode and everything up until this point. And do me a favor guys, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. Check out my blog at otakusen.com, and I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.